Hi everyone, it's Librarian Faith from the Mandel Public Library of West Palm Beach. And today I'm going to show you how to crochet a potholder using the yarn we dyed last week. Let's get started, shall we? You'll need a couple of things in order to do this project. Firstly, you'll need a crochet hook. You'll also need 100% cotton yarn. This is some of what's left of the yarn we dyed last week. Now it's important to use 100% cotton yarn for this project. If you use acrylic, it will melt as soon as it comes in contact with a very hot surface. You'll also need a pair of scissors and an optional but very helpful, a tapestry needle. So here is how our yarn last week turned out. Looks pretty nice, doesn't it? We're going to go ahead and start. Gonna unspool just a little bit and then tie a knot around your crochet hook. I'm using a size I, 9, or 5.5 millimeter, depending on how you want to measure the sizes. But we'll go ahead and tie the yarn around your needle. I'm doing a double knot just because that's how I usually like to start these projects. Then you'll do 30 loops. We're just doing the basic chain stitch again. And you'll want to do it on the looser end of things. Cotton isn't as forgiving a yarn material as acrylic is, so if it's too tight, you will definitely notice. "28, 29, 30. Okay, you have 30 loops across. So this will be the diagonal of our potholder. So we'll be going from about here to here as an idea, which is a great size for it. Then I'm going to do one more loop, keeping in mind that this is number 30. And then I'm going to start doing a single chain stitch all the way around both sides of this base. So to do a single chain stitch, you'll have one loop on your hook to start out with, and you'll just go ahead and punch it through the first circle in your chain stitch, pull the yarn through that circle so that you'll have 2 on your hook, wrap the yarn around your hook, and use it to pull it through those 2 loops so you only have 1 loop on your hook. And you'll keep repeating that process all the way down your chain stitch. So once again, I have 1 loop on my hook to start out with. I'm pushing the crochet hook through the next loop in my chain stitch. I'm using the hook to grab the cotton yarn and pulling it through that circle so that I then have 2 loops on my crochet hook. I'll then wrap the hook around the yarn and pull it through both of those loops on the hook so that I just have 1 remaining. Now we're doing a single stitch for this project because it uses up more yarn and makes for a thicker knit. And we want the thicker knit for this project. They'll be used to keep your hands and or tables safe from very hot materials, and we don't want there to be, admittedly very pretty, holes in the material that can let your fingers go through and touch the hot metal. Also, one thing to note, if you've just started out with crochet, I might use a solid color yarn for this project. Just because if you're still getting used to how everything looks, having multiple different colors can throw you off a little bit. And here's the last stitch at the end of our chain. So for this one, we're going to want to stitch another 2 single stitches in this last loop because we are going to continue these single stitches around the other side of our chain stitch base. There's a second, and then we'll do 1 more since we are now officially starting on the other side of the chain stitch. Now for most projects, you wouldn't be going on both sides of the chain. of the chain stitch. You would just stick to the one. But this one is going to help us create a unique diagonal design that we wouldn't be able to achieve otherwise. Now we're at the other end of our chain stitch. So, like on this end, we're going to put 2 extra stitches in that last chain stitch. And then we're going to punch through that first single stitch after we started going up on the chain stitch. We're going to do another single stitch. And then we'll just keep going around and around and around in circles until we have our final product. You can see now that we've gone around the base chain stitch a couple of times, the ends are starting to turn in, which is exactly what we want. The more times you go around this base chain stitch, the further these ends will come in until they eventually meet in the middle, and we'll have a square with a diagonal crochet pattern. Let's keep going. You can see here that I am just about done with this project. Here's the loop where my crochet hook would be, and I have just one more line to finish going up. So, I'm going to use the extra yarn that I dyed earlier for last week's project, and I'm going to use that just to finish up this little bit that is remaining. Although I think it's pretty slick that I managed to guess that closely with the yarn I dyed previously. I've unwound a little bit of it, and I'm just going to tie a double knot to connect these two. You know what? Just to make it look a little bit better, I'm going to cut off this first little bit of yarn since it has the darker color, and I'm going to connect the 2 lighter colors together to try to keep the visual pattern close to being the same. I'll trim these edges. And there we go. We have the new yarn connected in. You can see it's just a little tiny bump. So I just need to go up into the middle of this last part. We're going to keep doing our single stitch. And here's the knot, so I'm just going to try to bring it in the middle of these 2 loops, just so it'll stay hidden a little bit better. So you have this lined up in a nice point on this side. I'm checking to see if this lines up in a nice point, and it does. So then I'll pull out the needle, or I'll pull out the crochet hook, and I'll unwind a little bit more of the yarn. Won't need this much, but I like having more rather than not enough. And then I'll start threading it through. Now, this is the size of our current pot holder. If you don't like how big this is, you can do a fun trick by pinching the middle and then continuing on up and having it be a square pot holder, and then it'll be much bigger. But I very much like the diagonal crochet pattern that you can really see show up well on the back here. So we're going to stick with this slightly smaller size. One thing that, while isn't completely necessary but will be very helpful, is a tapestry needle. Now these are not sharp at all, slightly pointy, but that's about it. And they have a very large eye opening, so it makes it easier to put yarn or a really thick embroidery thread or whatever you have through that eye opening. And I'll make it easier to thread this through the various single stitches on the top. So we'll stick it through that very first single stitch at the top corner. We'll thread it through the opening of the last loop, and we'll pull it tight. And then we'll just keep going back and forth from one single stitch to the other, looping the yarn through, drawing it close. One thing to note, you don't necessarily want to punch through the second layer. You just want to bring these two together. You don't want to go all the way to the bottom side. You can see just then I pulled all of the yarn tight that we've been looping through these two sides. It's a good idea to do that in the middle instead of waiting till the very end, just because that'll be less yarn you'll have to pull tight and be able to keep a greater control over it. Pull that tight. And we'll do one more right here at the very end. Just putting it through that very tip. Pulling it tight. Then we're going to thread the needle under that last little bit of yarn we just pulled tight. We're going to pull it almost all the way through until we have a little loop. And we're going to push the tapestry needle through that loop. We'll pull that tight, and we'll use our fingernails to push it down extra snug. I might do it one more time just to be safe. So again, we stick the tapestry needle under that last piece of yarn that we pulled tight. We'll pull it almost all the way through until we have just a loop left. Stick the tapestry needle through that loop and pull it tight. And I've stuck the tapestry needle under one more single stitch, and I'm pulling it tight just to make extra sure everything's where it needs to be. And I'm snipping it closed, and there we have it, our pot holder slash trivet. Doesn't that look nice? The diagonal pattern was super easy to create, and it creates quite a striking appearance. And even the way we dyed the yarn shines through, giving us a really pretty pattern. And here's our finished product. Doesn't it look great? Our dye pattern really shows through on this pattern, and it makes it very interesting to look at. If you have a question about this or any other project I've made, feel free to leave a question down in the comment box below. I'll be happy to get to it and answer any questions you might have. And until next week, happy reading!